guys, it's Neil again from Heart of Texas Armory, and today I want to bring you guys a video review of one of my favorite Casio watches, and this is a Casio MSY-502, and it's a quartz chronograph, and like I mentioned, this is one of my favorite watches that I own. That's a Casio, so join me today and find out my complete thoughts on this really cool watch from Casio. And taking a look at the specs of this Casio MSY-502, some of the things that I really like about this particular watch are just the overall dimensions. So, case diameter of 42 millimeters, 44 if you include the crown, and a lug-to-lug of 48.5. So very wearable size. It's going to fit just about anyone's wrist size here. Also like the case thickness of only 12 millimeters, so it wears nice and thin on the wrist. Some other things that I'll mention here are the 200 meters of water resistance, which is really nice. So this you could actually go diving with this watch if you wanted to. Of course, swimming or anything like that's going to be perfectly fine for this watch. Being a chronograph is also nice, so you do have these subdials here, which look really cool here. But overall, the specs of this particular watch are really nice, and if you happen to find one of these watches online on eBay or something like that, I definitely recommend it because you get quite a bit of watch here, very wearable size, and you're probably not going to spend too much money on it. So the specs are definitely a positive with this particular watch. So looking at the operation of this watch here, being a chronograph, we do have these extra buttons. So we'll call this top button here button A, and the bottom one here button B. So to start the chronograph, it's as simple as pushing button A. You'll see the chronograph starts right up, counting the seconds. If you ever want to pause that, all you have to do is just push the A button again. The chronograph seconds hand will pause. You can start it right up again by pushing that A button. It also has a split time mode, so you can push button B, which will again pause the seconds hand, but it continues to count with that split time. So if you push the B button a second time, it will jump ahead to that, which is very nice. So you can keep track of split times. To reset the chronograph, all you have to do is just pause the time or the seconds timekeeping with button A and then press button B to reset that chronograph. Very simple operation. Looking at the subdials here, we do have the top dial is your stopwatch minute tracker, so it can track up to 60 minutes on that chronograph feature. Down below here at the bottom is a secondary timekeeping subdial, so that you can set that to a second time zone if you want, or like what I have right now, just on the same time as the actual major hands here. But you can also set your alarm feature with that subdial, so that's how you would set your alarm. The last dial here on the left hand side is your standard seconds timekeeping subdial, so that's always ticking away. You can see it ticking away right there. So very simple operation on the chronograph. We do have a screw down crown here, which is very nice. Of course, being a 200 meter dive watch, you would expect that, but it works just as you would expect. You unscrew it. First position, you can set the date here. We do have a date window at 3 o'clock. And then if you hold down the B button while in that first date mode there, you can adjust the alarm. So that's how you would set the alarm, is by pushing the B button or holding down the B button. And finally, by clicking out the crown to the final position, you can adjust the actual time hands here. So very simple operation. The watch is very well done. If you also look here on the chapter ring, we do have a tachometer. So you do have a tachometer, which is pretty cool if you want to use this particular chronograph to keep track of speed or something like that. So overall, very easy to use, very readable. And this, like I mentioned, this is probably my favorite chronograph watch that I own. So we'll wrap this video review up by talking about the positives and negatives. And starting with the positives here, we'll just start off with overall build quality. So this watch is just made really nicely. And Casio knows how to make really nice watches, and this one is no exception. Fit and finish is great. It looks cool. It's just a well-designed watch. Some other things I like is that it does have the 200 meters of water resistance. So this watch here, you could basically take scuba diving or snorkeling. It's going to be able to do just about anything. It's also very durable, similar to a G-Shock here. This watch is a do-it-all watch. You can use it just about anywhere, and I love that about this particular watch. Also like the interesting and unique looks that it has. Of course, being a chronograph, we do have the subdials here, which are really cool. Also like the overall angles and design of this watch here. Even the bezel here has these 3 little recess sections, which look really cool and unique. So overall looks is just really nice with this watch. It's definitely one of my favorite watches to look at. Very interesting design. Moving on to the negatives here, the first thing I'll mention is the bezel action. So this does have a 120 click unidirectional bezel, and it does work, but I will mention it's just difficult to use. It's kind of slick. There's not a lot to grip onto. It's a very thin bezel, and the bezel action is just not very good, so just keep that in mind. Another thing I'll mention here is the non-standard lugs. So we do have a 19 millimeter lug width here. So that size is already difficult to find replacement bands and straps, but this one makes it even probably more difficult to find straps. And in fact, you'll probably be stuck with this Casio bracelet, although that's not a huge negative because this rubber bracelet is quite comfortable. But if you did try to find a bracelet or strap to replace in here, it's probably not going to match up very good because you would have a large gap between the edge of the strap and the case body here. So keep that in mind, and that's just because these lugs are non-standard, and your drill lugs here for your pins is so close to the edge. So you're going to have a difficult time finding replacement straps for this particular watch. Another thing I'll mention is the loom. Now the loom is usable and it works just fine, but it's certainly not a torch here. So just keep that in mind. The loom is what I would call average. Average for a Casio watch. So it does work. You should be able to read your watch at night, but it is not very bright. So keep that in mind. And the last thing I'll mention here is that these watches are no longer in production. They first came out in the mid-2000s. So I'm sure Casio made a good number of these watches, but they're just kind of hard and difficult to track down. So if you're interested in one of these watches, and I do highly recommend you pick one up, you're just going to have to be patient and look on eBay to see if you can track one down. So that is a negative, that it's a bit hard to locate one of these particular watches. Also, they do have a few different varieties of this watch, so they have some different colors. I'll try to put a picture up right now to show you guys some different color options that would be out there. But overall, this watch here is an excellent watch. Like I mentioned, it's one of my favorite Casios. I think it's just really cool looking. I love the chronograph features here. I love the 200 meters of water resistance, the durability. Overall, this watch is excellent, and it would be certainly worth your time to try to track one down. If the design here appeals to you, I suggest you try to track one down and purchase. So I hope you enjoyed this video review. If you have any questions or comments on this watch, feel free to leave them down below, and I'll do my best to answer them. Guys, take care. I'll catch you on the next one.